Welcome back to Spoiler Free Wrestling, everyone. And Rob Van Dam was recently a guest on Reddit for an Ask Me Anything session. RVD talked about his current deal with Impact Wrestling, attitudes towards cannabis in wrestling, and more. Here are the highlights of Rob Van Dam's AMA session. So he was asked here if he still has the briefcase from when he won Money in the Bank, and how does the Impact Wrestling, the current version of Impact Wrestling, compare to his time in TNA Wrestling previously? RVD answered, I still have the briefcase, and of course now they paint them all. Impact takes care of me or I wouldn't be there. I have a much better deal than I had before, and everyone there is super respectful and appreciative. I thought this one was pretty funny. RVD was asked, how did you and Mysterio get away with 420 as a tag team finisher name? Did Vince ultimately get the joke? Rob Van Dam responded, he asked if it was a drug reference before allowing commentators to put it over. I told him, via Paul, it was our combined shoe size. Ray is 8, me 12, and we hit them with all 4 legs. So 4 legs, and then 20 is their combined shoe size. Rob Van Dam was also asked how his body is holding up at 48 years of age, and RVD responded, I don't know what a 48-year-old desk jockey feels like to compare. Managing pain is part of my everyday, but I think it always has been since my 20s. I'm sure it's adding up, no doubt, but as you can see, I still got the moves. RVD was also asked, did you have any backup plans for a career in case it didn't work out? If so, what were they? RVD responded, when I was younger, I wanted to write or draw comics. By the time I was training with the Sheik, I figured I'd be a kickboxer if wrestling didn't work out. He was also asked about an incident during WWE's relaunch of ECW, about a match he had with Hardcore Holly, where Holly went through the table and sliced his back open. And so Rob Van Dam responded, I knew Bob was tough and we'd keep going. People forget WWE's ECW was good for the first few months when I worked with Bob, Test, Sabu, Big Show, before they took away the ECW means anything goes substance. RVD was also asked about changing attitudes to cannabis in the wrestling industry. And in response to more in the wrestling industry having a positive outlook towards cannabis, RVD responded, it makes sense. The world is coming around like I always said it would when people discovered the truths. People used to tell me I was killing my brain cells, and now they're learning I was protecting them. RVD was also asked, what would you say your wrestling character is? How would you describe the RVD gimmick? And he responded, I think I agree with the way I heard JR describe my character recently. It's one of my sides amped up. Not a far stretch, but then quite a different side than my normally quiet and passive foundation. I usually only flex when it's for business. And on the biggest changes he's seen in wrestling, RVD said, the smart fans think they understand how everything works, and so the current style is to cater to that assumption rather than to the fans 15 years ago that saw competition in what they were watching. And I thought that's interesting because for those of you who have been on this channel for a while, I've said a few times that I watch wrestling, I think, differently than maybe say like a Dave Meltzer or somebody else. I pick my favorites and then I want them to win. Whereas a lot of wrestling critics these days, they're ranking matches and it's almost like a performance art. Well, I mean, it is a performance and it is an art, but it's the idea was at one point the fan is supposed to watch it and have an emotional investment in one person winning the match. And anyway, RVD was also asked who he's excited to have a match with. And he said, I don't get excited, but I have fun when I'm out there in front of my fans. I see I'm teaming up with Willie Mack and Rich Swann next week, and those boys can go. RVD was also asked, what is your opinion on One Night Stand in '06? The match, the win, the new coming of ECW. And Rob Van Dam said, my greatest attribute to the business, in my opinion. And it's interesting because that night it was such a great pay-per-view, and it was such an exciting time. But now looking back on it, we know what was to come from that version of ECW. But in the moment, Rob Van Dam winning the title from John Cena was big. And finally, he was asked, do you have any regrets for your career? And in reference to the time him and Sabu got pulled over and busted for having cannabis in the car, Rob Van Dam responded, I wish I would have sprayed Ozium when I got pulled over that time. And if you don't get the reference, Ozium is a thing you can spray to get rid of the smell of cannabis. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any news or reports from Spoiler Free Wrestling. Thanks, everyone.